Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today we are doing my February reading wrap up. These are all the books that I've completed so far in the month of February. We still have a few days left of the month. I think I'll finish maybe 2 more books this month. We will just have to see where it goes, but let's get into it. Something I forgot to do in January is that I've been showing y'all the puzzles that I have completed in the month. Do you want to include that as well? I finished this Laurel, I don't know, I can't read cursive well, but the Ophelia puzzle. This is from Walmart. Okay, Buffalo Games and Puzzles. My dad picked this up for me. It's a really cute design. I'm gonna say it doesn't come in a little plastic bag. I like those to separate the outside pieces and then the inner pieces. It's not, I don't want to say it's cheaply made, but sometimes the paper would like roll up. This one is very easy to damage, so be careful with that. But if you're looking for just a little cheap puzzle to do, this is a good one. But I know y'all are here for the books, so we're going to talk about the books, starting with the one I finished most recently, going all the way to the one that I finished first this. The first book that I had to talk about was my nonfiction pick, and that is Theodosia Burr Alston, Portrait of a Prodigy by Richard N. Cote. That being said, this is a biography of Theodosia, but as I've come to learn in 2026, is sometimes there's not enough info for a book to actually be made, and a book of the length that it is. Theodosia was a woman born in the 1700s and lived through some of the 19th century. There's just not a whole lot of info on her that made this book really a story of Aaron Burr's life from birth to the death of his daughter, or disappearance of his daughter, if you will. This is really a book about Aaron Burr and has me extremely fascinated by him. I do have the book Burr by Gore Vidal somewhere behind me. I really want to get to that now after learning so much about Aaron Burr. He was such a character. I learned a lot in this book. I know in school we can't sit down and learn everything that there is in American history. I didn't realize that Burr was actually vice president when he had his duel with Alexander Hamilton. Therefore, the vice president was a fugitive on the run. He ran first to Pittsburgh and had this grand conspiracy of a Mexican empire that him, his daughter, and her descendants would rule. He was going to have western states like Kentucky, Ohio, and Tennessee secede from the Union, then take parts of what were part of Spain, think New Orleans, parts of Texas, that part of the world, and make it an empire. As I said, he was going to take New Orleans, take boats from there to Mexico, and storm Mexico City with a private army. He had the backing of the British to do all of this. He somehow makes it back to Washington, D.C. and has a dinner with Thomas Jefferson and just seen as a traitor. He was already seen, he killed Alexander Hamilton. So in those eastern states, he already had a bit of a bad reputation. And now in the western states, he's seen as a traitor. He doesn't really have a place in America anymore. He goes into exile first to Britain, and the British have really cooled down. Like, he was still wanting to have this empire, and he had an alias, Theodosia had an alias, and they were writing letters all about this. After all of that, he still wanted to go about this plan, but the British really cooled off on it and weren't going to fund it anymore. Then he just went off exploring Europe, exploring the continent, writing some very curious journal entries, and these journals were meant to go to his daughter. He was just quite the character. So as you can see, I did learn a lot, but not about Theodosia, more so about her father. And I don't know how that makes me feel about this book. It didn't have a huge impact on me. It was just like fine. But as I said, I learned a lot. The research, tremendous amounts of research, because another thing with Theodosia, a lot of her previous biographies that came out in the 19th and 20th centuries were not based on fact. That's crazy to think about. These authors and autobiographers, they were just gossip and rumors. One of them was that she had an intimate relationship with Meriwether Lewis. If you don't know who that is, that's Lewis from Lewis and Clark. And that went down in biographies. But Richard N. Cote goes and looks at the facts. When this supposed relationship would have happened, physical relationship, because they did have a correspondence of writing letters to each other, but they weren't sleeping together, because at this time, that was very frowned upon and scandalous. But autobiographers were saying that. And the author, he went and he looked. Meriwether Lewis would have been in what they called Indiana Territory. when Theodosia was in Washington, D.C., nowhere near each other at the dates of their supposed relationship. But for a century, that was written as fact. It makes me really think about celebrity gossip, political gossip, scandal, whatever, how it's going to be remembered 200 years from now. Is it going to go down in books as fact? Very interesting to think about. And we even see how historical fiction books have been written about Theodosia and how authors went about that, and about historical fiction in general, of creative liberty and history itself, and how to do that and how to properly do that. All of that was extremely interesting. These chapters are quite long. It did get tedious for me at times, and at the start of the book I did have a lot of confusion because there were a lot of Theodorus, Theodosia, a lot of confusing names, but I mean, that's their names. You can't really do anything about that. I don't know what I would tell the author to do, but overall I do think this introduced me to a new part of history, and I'm thankful for that. I gave Theodosia a 3.75 out of 5 stars, so yes, I would recommend that you pick up this book. The next book that I have to talk about is one that is very beloved all over the bookish internet. And it's a wild ride. I'm talking about Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I didn't expect to love the character as much as I did. He's just so naive and innocent at how he looks at the world. And especially during the latter half of the book, I felt such an emotional connection to him, because just seeing him in the situation that he's put into and how he's been manipulated, it was so sad to see how somebody so innocent had that happen to them. But I mean, sadly, that happens in the real world all the time, where innocent, vulnerable people are taken advantage of. The atmosphere is a standout and is what you're going to probably hear the most about this book. It's very fever dream-esque, ethereal, eternal. Those are words I use to describe Rome. If you like the ancient world, if you like the classics being Greece and Rome, is what I'm talking about when I use that word, you're definitely going to like this, because it's just some place between space, time, history. I don't even know how to describe this atmosphere. It's very cinematic. I'm seeing the images in my head and it's just all over the place. Really immersed into the story. I hear a lot that Susanna Clarke is very much a writer who is more about vibes, and that is what her books are about. The writing style, I was very confused for the first half of the book. We're seeing a compilation of journal entries. I have a very logical mind when it comes to reading, and I had no idea what was going on, who we were dealing with, where we were, as I said, what is going on. It was a very confusing time, but as everybody says, stick with it. You do get answers. I felt very disoriented and confused while reading that, and I do think some people will find beauty in that. I think that's the point. And I do think it might be, but just for my mind and how my mind works, that didn't really gel with me. I love the idea of this plot. It just has so many gears turning in my head of what the author could have been trying to do. I do think this could be an allegory for addiction and how it takes advantage of you. And it can be any kind of addiction where you don't really care about anything else in this world and just care about what you're struggling with, and are just so focused on yourself that everything is like in one ear out the other, going over your head. No, I don't, after finishing the book, I don't think that is the main theory. I think the main theme here is how us living beings are these innocent things, but the world messes us up. The world and society corrupts. I can even see Piranesi himself representing humanity, and that the further we go, you can take that anyway with technology and just living in general, we forget where we came from, and that is why history repeats itself. It's why cruel acts repeat themselves and why terrible things happen over and over, because we don't remember where we came from. We forget the longer we're here, and that is why history and learning and reading is so important. This one I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars, so yes, this is another one that I would recommend. I now have Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. Yes, I did read a Christmas romance in February because I was focusing on reading the shortest romance books on my TBR according to Goodreads, and this one was the shortest one at the time of making that list. The main character, Stella, was a breath of fresh air. She's a felon and is now out here trying to make a life for herself after prison, and I really thought she was going to be the character that might be a Mary Sue, might be too perfect, but no, that wasn't the case at all. Just, as I said, a breath of fresh air for the romance genre. I haven't read from a character like her before. Now, we do get both POVs. We have our main character of, what is his name? Aiden is our male main character. He's a happy-go-lucky golden retriever. It's a black cat, golden retriever romance. He's just a little too perfect for me, where, yes, he's a great guy, but there's no faults to him that, oh my gosh, it almost reminds me of a robot or something, that he's robotic in his nature of his golden retriever act that he has going on. It's too perfect, and I think that's boring to read about, if I'm being honest with y'all. I like my characters that have their flaws. I like them to be human, not robots or AI or alien. And something that I didn't like with their dynamic, he had to keep convincing her he's not just this nice guy, this nice corny guy. It reminds me of Grease, how at the end of the movie they've both kind of changed their vibe, their aesthetic, their fashion to fit each other. I don't understand why he has to do that. Why can he not just be himself with her? Why is he constantly having to try to prove himself? I don't think that is a happy relationship and one that you should get into if you have to do that. The atmosphere was great. If you want that Hallmark movie Christmas-esque New York City at Christmas time, I personally never experienced that in person, but I do know that's a trip that so many people like to do, and I want to do it one day. I want to do it. Just putting it out there. I've been wanting to do it my whole life. I think the movie Home Alone, Christmas time in New York City. If you want that wrapped into a book, and you know that week before Christmas, you can feel that adrenaline of getting all the gifts ready, getting everything wrapped and everything perfect, getting the decorations perfect. That adrenaline is, you get it off the pages of this book. And I love that the writer was able to perfect that time of year perfectly. For writing, Stella's chapters were fine, but again with Aiden, he had these tangents. He had these stories that he would tell about his Aunt Edna. Sorry, I have my notes down here. But he had stories that he would tell about Aunt Edna. I do think these were a bit of like conversational tactics of maybe he could tell that Stella was nervous, or that any of his workers are nervous, and just to kind of chill them out, make them laugh. I think that might be the point, but reading these long stories over and over, I didn't care about his Aunt Edna. I'm sorry, that makes me sound like a jerk, but I didn't care about these stories. It was so tedious to read. And even in his own chapters, he had all just long tangents where I had to skim through them because I don't care. And he was so in his head about being her boss. And obviously we love to see a powerful man being like accountable for his actions and for how relationship dynamics and power dynamics might be viewed. I think that's fantastic, but it got repetitive to read about, especially in a book that's only like 200 pages. The plot was really predictable. I predicted things like 10 chapters out, and the plot line with the friend made me roll my eyes. It was so dramatic, and I don't think it really added anything to the story, and I don't think it was necessary for the story. I think it was honestly just to add some drama and be dramatic. Sorry. But as this is a romance, I do not see this relationship lasting. Stella, as I said, is a young adult. She went into prison probably in her late teens and is now getting out into the world after that. And he's her first relationship outside of prison. So I just think she's going to outgrow him. I don't know what's going to happen with him, if I'm being honest with y'all, but I don't see this relationship lasting. I gave this a 2.5, so I would recommend it with a maybe. Now we have Sloppy First by Megan McCaffrey. This was probably my favorite book that I read this month. Right off the bat, this might seem like a campy, silly story, drama-filled because they're teenagers, but it's so much more than that. It depicts what it is truly like to be a teenager and how so much falls on the shoulders of teenagers, and we make a lot of mistakes at that age. I mean, we make a lot of mistakes through life in general, let me tell you, but as a teenager, it's trial and error. But those years, a lot of us think they're awkward and kind of cringe looking back on, but they help shape us into the person that we are now, the person that we become. So they are so quintessential, and I think this book displays that perfectly. Jessica, I never found her to be annoying, and she was able to deal with her conflicts. Yes, she is a teenager. The book was published in 2001, and it takes place in 2000, and it really made me think, in romance books today, they're so trope heavy, and that's how books are advertised. I think characters are dumbed down for the sake of having tropes. This book made me realize that. That might be a real hot take, unpopular opinion, but I think it's true. Seeing the communication skills in this book that was published in the 2020s versus this one published in 2001, these characters are teenagers. These are in their 20s and 30s. These had better communication skills than these did, and I don't know if maybe the internet and smartphones might also have a play there, and maybe that's just how society has developed, but I think these were just more real characters, had better communication skills, and were smart. Again, even if they're teenagers. The atmosphere and tone are probably my favorite part. As I said, it is very campy and can be silly at times, but I think it perfectly showcases that Y2K world. Now, if you do the audiobook, it does make changes to make this more politically correct, and she goes by Rebecca Searle now, but Megan McCaffrey does do a little author's note at the end about how she's not necessarily proud of some of the words that she used, and there's like talks of eating disorders, which back then it was the norm to talk about carbs and weight and all of that, where now the beauty standard is different. So she does do a great job at doing this author's note at the end, but at the same time I feel like, do we need to be erasing parts of literature? Because there has since been a republication for the 20th anniversary. As I said, my copy right here was published in 2001, so I don't know what is in that 20th anniversary edition, if the words have changed or not. It really brings up that question, do we need to be changing things? I do think putting the author's note at the end, I think that's great, saying I'm not proud of some of the words that I used, but that's how it was in 2000. But again, that's not an excuse. You can't excuse that. But these books are like a time capsule to that time period. So it's an interesting discussion that I've been having with some friends this month. The writing was easy to digest. It was good. Now, this is a bit of a formatting issue. We do have these emails that kind of start out a chapter, but it will be listed at the end of the chapter. But if you're doing reading it physically or reading it on Kindle, I think you'll be fine. But with the audiobook, that formatting was kind of just awkward transitions. I think I talked a lot about the plot when I talked about the characters, is that this is just really showing how important teenagers are, because they are our future. We shouldn't just throw their whims aside or wave it off, because they are the ones who they're going to be voting in our next elections. Like, we really need to pay attention to them and whatever issues and all that they have. I just really love the depiction of teenagehood and those teenage years that Megan McCaffrey shows in this book. And yes, I would recommend it. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I then read Cozy by Jan Brett. This was my children's graphic novel pick of the month, and I really loved how this book was about building community. And even if it's just helping others with your hands, even if you don't have too much, only have your body, you can give somebody a helping hand. You can open the door for somebody, give somebody a pat on the back, a hug. And building community is so important, even if it's just little things. And something I loved about this book is that I think it will be, well, one, I do love the art and how it just looks like this could be hanging up on a wall somewhere, how they're kind of like boxed in, you know. I like that. And also, I think this will be such an interactive book for a teacher, librarian, or a parent to read to some children, because we can kind of see what might be coming next in the story. So it'd be like, okay, what animal do you think Cozy's gonna meet next? You can just ask them so many questions about, my apologies, I had to go get a drink. I had to tickle my throat after talking for almost 25 minutes. But I think this is a really interactive story and will be great for families or classes to read alike. Lastly, we have my book club pick, which is Thrifted Hearts. I will insert a picture because this is one that I got over on Kindle Unlimited. I didn't hate our main characters, but I didn't really understand them either. We have our main character, female main character, Anna, who is kind of faking being poor, and that put a bad taste in my mouth, because I don't understand why she can't come from a rich family but work at a thrift store if she wants to. Why does she have to justify these things and just pretending to be something that she's not? Again, we saw that in one of the other books. Why do people have to pretend? Why can you not just be yourself. We have our male main character of Noah. I didn't care about him complaining about his problems of being rich. These characters were really out of touch, if you ask me. I thought the atmosphere was going to be a lot about the thrift store, but no, we didn't get that much of the thrift store, and that's mainly why I picked up this book, because I'm somebody who personally loves going to the thrift store, but no, didn't get a lot of that here. Writing was fine, but randomly over halfway into the book, we get banter that's just out of nowhere, and I think the author was probably just like, oh, people like banter in their romance books, I should probably add some of that now. It just was so sudden and out of nowhere. This plot didn't do a whole lot for me. It was really unrealistic, as I talked about, just the playing poor. This is almost like a movie, but we have our main character of Anna, who she decides to go to this gala. She's like, nobody's gonna recognize me. I'm gonna have my hair up. I'm gonna do my makeup. I'm gonna be wearing a gown. Nobody's gonna recognize me. Like, no, this is not Hannah Montana. That doesn't happen in the real world. Just putting on makeup doesn't make you unrecognizable. And it was just kind of cringy and funny to read because, like, no, that doesn't happen. The third act breakup was also blown out of proportion. Y'all know I despise the third act breakup in books. This one could have been fixed if just 2 more sentences came out of the characters' mouths, but no. We have to have a third act breakup. That's how modern contemporary romance works. Can we please stop doing that? And can we please stop dumbing down characters for the sake of tropes? This book didn't do a whole lot for me. I don't think it's bad, but this is the first short story romance that I've ever read. So again, trial and error. It's part of life. I wouldn't recommend Thrifted Hearts. Those are all of the books that I completed in the month of February. I know I went on for a little while. This is longer than usual, but I know some people like those lengthy, talky videos. So if you do, let me know in the comments below and give this video a thumbs up. But if you made it through the whole video, leave a heart emoji in the comments below, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye. If you are familiar with my videos, you're used to seeing Sherman at the end of them. Sadly, Sherman has since passed away, but I would still like to encourage you guys to help your local shelters. Sherman was at the Darlington County Humane Society in rural South Carolina. I always have their link down below in the description if you guys would like to help them, but also help your local shelters as well. You can do that by donating, sharing posts like this one, volunteering, fostering, and adopting, which it's great to do all of those things. Great to help your community, great to help the animals in your community, and I cannot recommend it enough. All of my pets were rescues, they were strays or from animal shelters, and I love them so much, and I know how much love they can give, so knowing these pets at the shelter can equally give that much love, it's amazing. And y'all should totally take part and help out those local animal shelter pets, and please help them.